Hi, this is Lou, and my topic today might not interest you much if you're not a fan of team sports. It's how team sports have coped with board size problems and seeing how that can be applied to game design. And the usual caveats, these videos are really for listening. They're wordy slides for people for whom English is a second language. And I don't even use slides in in-person teaching, but online you don't get the feedback. Most major team sports are played by people who are much larger and much faster than when the sport originated. Much more coordinated even. Much more athletic, in a word. But in most cases the size of the playing field hasn't changed. As soon as you have a large fan capacity stadiums that are common, it becomes really hard to change the size of the field. Ice hockey is unique in that North American rinks are smaller than European rinks. Soccer and baseball are unusual because their overall size varies within set limits in the case of soccer, but the internal lines, for example the penalty box and the base lines in baseball, are of a set size. So, because the field itself can't be changed, most sports have got by changing the rules. Soccer tends to be much behind in this respect for various reasons. In American sports, there are rule change proposals every year, and that's how we've retained things like 4 downs to go 10 yards, despite the increased size and speed of American football players. And there are spin-offs, of course. Canadian football has a larger field than American football, 3 downs to make 10 yards, but 12 men. And there are other more subtle differences in rules as well. Arena football, on the other hand, has a smaller indoor field and only 8 men. In basketball, we have international rules that are a little bit different from American. But there have still been lots of changes, like the three-pointer, zone defenses, at some point being outlawed but now accepted. The width of the lane was changed a great deal. It was once very narrow. And we've reduce the number of jump balls. When I played in high school, the laws of basketball even outlawed dunking, much to my disgust, because I could dunk, but that didn't stick. Of course, more than 100 years ago, there was a jump ball after every basket, and there was no dribbling in original basketball. So it's changed quite a lot. How about changes in other sports? In football, the forward pass was something that was hardly used, even if, whether it was illegal or not, I'm not sure, in early American football. The equipment has changed, especially the helmets. Helmets were leather and they had no face guards of any kind at one point. Platooning has been added. It used to be the case that the same 11 guys played offense and defense. But now we have specialization to the point where many players only play on certain downs in certain circumstances. At one point, which is within my memory, we moved goalposts to the back of the end zone to make field goals harder to kick. And then later, we said that a failed field goal let the other team have the ball where you kicked from rather than from the 20-yard line. We've changed the blocking rules and the holding rules. We've changed kickoffs repeatedly in where you kicked off from and what the results were. And of course, we've added overtime as well. If you go back far enough, if a football game ended in a tie, that was it. In baseball, much better gloves have made a difference. Probably the biggest change I can think of is lowering the height of the mound, the pitcher's mound. In hockey, we went from wooden sticks to non-wooden sticks. The goalies got masks and much larger pads. The players started to wear helmets. When I was a young fellow watching hockey, nobody wore a helmet. And we've added overtime and shootouts more recently. In rugby, you have the sin bin, borrowed from ice hockey. In soccer, even soccer is slow to change rules as it is, has changed the offsides rule several times, and has limited back passing to the goalie. And video replay, of course, is in all these sports except soccer is just getting there. Something that hasn't happened in my memory is changing the size of the goal in soccer or ice hockey. I'm almost surprised that it hasn't happened, but it's been talked about but never done. Now, how do we apply this to board games and video games that use boards, which are many games actually? If your board turns out to be too confined or allows too much freedom, you have two choices: change the board or change the rules. Team sports had to change the rules because they couldn't change the board. But many aspects of board design depend on the parameters of the rules. For example, the capacity of a location. If you can only have one piece in a location, that makes the board smaller. If you can have several pieces in a location, that effectively makes the board bigger. Speed of movement is the other. If pieces can move very fast on a board, that makes the board smaller. If they're slow, that makes the board larger. In effect, it takes more turns to go from one side of the board to the other. Now, to me, the subtle interplay of rules is one reason why many people play games and why people design games. To see how one change affects the other. And that's one reason why variants of games are popular, because people want to try changes and see how that affects the game. So, games with as many fans and as much money as major sports nonetheless change over time as a result of what amounts to a whole lot of playtesting. They can't change the board size, the field size, but they can change rules to compensate for things like players being much more athletic. Thanks for listening.